Welcome to Tale Grove, where every story grows roots, and every lesson touches the heart.
How dare you defy the council? Do you know who I am? This market operates by my rules now.
The village market buzzed with life under the midday sun. Women shouted the prices of fresh vegetables, men haggled over fish and grains, and children darted between stalls laughing and playing. The air smelled of spices, roasted plantains, and dust kicked up by bustling feet. Among this chaos, Amara walked with an air of unmistakable pride. Every eye seemed to turn toward her as she glided past the crowded stalls, her designer heels clicking sharply on the uneven stones. Her fitted dress gleamed in the sun, and gold bracelets jingled on her wrists as if announcing her presence. She loved the attention, the subtle nods of admiration, and even the envy she felt certain she inspired. As she reached the center of the market, her gaze fell on a poor-looking man quietly moving past the stalls. Obina's shirt was faded and patched in several places, his sandals cracked and dusty, and his hair streaked with gray. Most people ignored him, assuming he was just another struggling villager. But Amara's sharp eyes caught every detail. Her lips curled into a sneer. "Look at this man," she muttered under her breath. "Does he even know how to dress properly? Disgusting." Her thoughts grew louder, almost like a storm inside her mind. Who does he think he is, just walking here like he belongs? Without thinking, she stepped forward, drawing the attention of a small crowd nearby. "Hey!" she shouted, loud enough for several people to hear. Obina looked up slowly, his calm brown eyes meeting hers. "Madam, he began, but Amara cut him off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "You." "Yes, you," she barked. "Do you know who I am? I work hard for my life, and yet here you are, wandering around, staring with those filthy eyes. How dare you look at me like I'm some common woman?" The crowd turned, phones already out, some whispering, some laughing nervously. Obina's eyes didn't widen in fear. He simply tilted his head, expression neutral, voice soft and measured. "Madam, I mean no harm. I was only walking. I did not stare at you." But Amara's pride burned hotter. She stepped closer, the gold rings on her fingers catching the sun. "Liar," she snapped, her voice cutting through the market noise. "I saw you. People like you think you can disrespect women like me. You think your poverty gives you innocence? You are nothing. Do you understand?" The market seemed to hold its breath as Obina bowed slightly, calm in the face of her fury. The tension was thick, a mix of curiosity, fear, and excitement buzzing in the air. No one could have guessed what would happen next, or how this ordinary market encounter would spiral into something far beyond anyone's imagination. The market fell into an uneasy silence as Amara's words echoed in the air. People stopped bargaining. Even the children froze, sensing something terrible was about to happen. Obina stood still, his hands loosely by his sides, his face calm but his heart heavy. He had faced insults before, but something about Amara's eyes, cold, sharp, full of pride, cut deeper than words. So this is how they see the poor, he thought. As dirt beneath their feet. Amara took another step closer, her heels digging into the ground like a declaration of power. "Don't stand there pretending to be innocent," she snapped. "Men like you are always looking for trouble. Beggars with wandering eyes." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. An old woman shook her head slowly. A young helper girl, no more than 12, clutched a basket of tomatoes and whispered, "Auntie, please, he didn't do anything." Amara turned sharply toward the girl. "Silence," she shouted. "This is none of your business." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she stepped back afraid. Obina finally spoke again, his voice low and steady. "Madam, I respect you. I respect everyone here. I did not insult you. Please let there be peace." His calm only fueled Amara's anger. To her, his quietness felt like mockery. How dare he speak with confidence? She thought. How dare a poor man look unbothered in front of me? Before anyone could stop her, she raised her hand. The sound of the slap cracked through the market like thunder. Gasps erupted from every corner. The helper girl screamed. A man dropped the fish he was holding. Obina staggered slightly but did not fall. His cheek burned, yet his expression remained controlled, almost sorrowful. He slowly touched his face, not in anger, but in disbelief. The crowd murmured loudly now. She went too far. That was unnecessary. This is shameful. Phones were raised higher, capturing every second. Amara's chest rose and fell as she breathed heavily. That will teach you, she yelled, though her voice trembled just a little. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in her heart, but she crushed it instantly. Let this be a lesson, she continued loudly. Know your place. Obinna looked around at the watching faces, some mocking, some pitying, some regretful. His eyes finally rested on the young helper girl, who stared at him with sorrow and apology. He gave her a small, reassuring nod. One day, he thought quietly, this moment will speak louder than my silence. And as he turned away from the crowd, no one knew that the man they had just watched being humiliated carried a secret powerful enough to shake every soul standing in that market. The noise of the market faded behind Obinna as he walked down a narrow dirt path leading away from the village center. Each step was slow and deliberate, not because his body was weak, but because his mind was heavy with thought. The sting on his cheek had not faded, yet it was nothing compared to the quiet ache in his chest. Words and hands hurt, he reflected, but pride hurts the soul far more. He did not look back, even though he could still feel the weight of many eyes on him. At the edge of the village stood a modest-looking hut, its walls plain and its roof weathered. To any passerby, it was the home of a poor man struggling to survive. Obinna stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him. The room was quiet, clean, and strangely disciplined. From the shadows emerged another man, well-built, neatly dressed, his posture alert and respectful. This was Chaik, Obinna's loyal friend and closest confidant. They went too far today, Chaik said softly, his eyes burning with restrained anger. You did not deserve that humiliation. Obinna sighed and sat on a wooden stool. I deserved nothing, he replied calmly. What happened today was not about me. It was about her heart, and the hearts of those who watched. He paused, touching his cheek lightly. Pain reveals truth, my friend. That is why I endure it. Chaik shook his head. You could end all of this with one word. One phone call. They don't know who you really are. He gestured around the room, then reached under a cloth-covered table, and pulled out a leather briefcase. Inside were documents, bank statements, and photographs, proof of vast lands, successful businesses, and wealth beyond imagination. You are one of the richest men in this region, Chaik continued. Yet you walk like a beggar. Obinna looked at the documents but did not touch them. Gold blinds people, he said quietly. If I walked with riches, they would respect my money, not my soul. He stood and walked to the small window, gazing at the village beyond. I disguised myself to understand how people treat the weak, the poor, the unseen. Chaik lowered his voice. And what have you learned? Obinna's eyes darkened with quiet resolve. That kindness is rare, but cruelty is loud. He turned back, a calm strength settling over his face. What happened in the market was not the end. It was only the beginning. Outside, the village continued its life, unaware that the man they had mocked carried a secret capable of shaking their pride to its core. Obinna straightened his worn shirt and took a deep breath. Soon he thought, the truth will speak. And when it does, it will not shout, it will shock. Amara's house stood tall at the edge of the village, painted in bright colors and surrounded by a high fence that separated her world from everyone else's. As she stepped inside that afternoon, she tossed her handbag onto a polished table and let out a satisfied breath. The market incident replayed in her mind, not with shame but with pride. Some people need to be reminded of their place, she thought, adjusting her hair in the mirror. If I hadn't acted, he would have thought he could disrespect women like me. Soon, her friends gathered in the spacious living room, their laughter filling the air as they admired Amara's jewelry and expensive shoes. Amara, you were so bold today, one of them giggled. I heard you put a dirty man in his place at the market. Amara smirked and crossed her legs confidently. Bold? No. I was just being honest. People like that should not forget who is above them. The women burst into laughter, clinking their drinks together. Exactly, another friend added. Money speaks. If you have it, you deserve respect. Amara nodded in agreement, enjoying their praise like sweet music. Yet somewhere deep inside, a faint unease tried to surface, but she pushed it away. Why should I feel bad? She reasoned. I worked hard for what I have. From the doorway, a soft voice interrupted the celebration. Amara, her mother said gently, leaning on her walking stick. The room grew quieter. Her mother's face carried years of wisdom and worry. I heard about what happened today. Amara rolled her eyes slightly. Mama, please. Don't start. The man was rude. Her mother stepped closer, her eyes steady and sad. Pride is a heavy load, my child. The higher you lift your head, the harder the fall. Wealth is a gift, not a weapon. The words hung in the air, uncomfortable and unwelcome. Amara stood up sharply. You always defend people who have nothing, she snapped. That man embarrassed himself, not me. Her friends avoided her mother's gaze, suddenly interested in their phones. Her mother sighed deeply. One day, she said quietly, you will meet someone who teaches you that respect has nothing to do with clothes or money. Amara laughed dismissively as her mother turned away. Old stories and empty warnings, she thought. Nothing can touch me. As the evening sun dipped low, Amara admired her reflection once more, unaware that fate was already moving silently toward her, ready to strip away the comfort of pride and expose the truth beneath her shining surface. The envelope arrived 2 days later, sealed in gold and delivered by a uniformed courier. Amara smiled the moment she saw it. Events like this were her natural habitat, places where wealth sparkled, and status spoke louder than character. She read the invitation slowly, savoring every word. Grand charity gala, an evening of power, prestige, and promise. Her heart fluttered with excitement. This is where I belong, she thought. Among people who matter. That night, the gala hall glowed like a palace. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, reflecting off polished floors and elegant dresses. Soft music floated through the air as wealthy guests arrived in luxury cars, greeting one another with practiced smiles. Amara stepped inside confidently, her dress stunning, her posture proud. Heads turned. Whispers followed. She felt alive. Every glance fed her ego. This is my world, she murmured to herself. Across the hall, a man entered quietly, dressed in a simple but neat suit. No gold chains. No loud confidence. This was Obina, still disguised, still observing. He blended into the background, his eyes calm and watchful. As he moved through the crowd, he noticed how people treated one another. Some smiled warmly at servers. Others snapped their fingers for attention. His gaze soon found Amara. She laughed loudly with her friends, waving away a waiter. Careful, she said mockingly. This glass costs more than your salary. The waiter forced a smile and nodded. Obina's jaw tightened slightly. The same heart, he thought. Different place. As the evening progressed, Amara boasted about her success, exaggerating stories of influence and power. I don't associate with just anyone, she said proudly. Standards matter. Nearby guests nodded, impressed. She felt untouchable. Yet she couldn't explain why a strange unease crept into her chest. She glanced around and suddenly froze. Near the far end of the hall stood a man whose face stirred something familiar. No, it can't be she thought, narrowing her eyes. The lighting shifted, and her heart skipped. The posture, the calm eyes, the silence. It was him, or someone who looked exactly like him. Her stomach tightened. Why would a man like that be here? Obina noticed her reaction and looked away, hiding a faint, knowing smile. The moment stretched, heavy with anticipation. The room buzzed with excitement, unaware that beneath the glitter and music, a quiet storm was forming, one that would soon turn admiration into shock, and pride into unbearable regret. The soft music in the gala hall suddenly faded as the host stepped onto the stage, tapping the microphone gently. Conversations slowed, laughter softened, and all eyes turned forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, tonight, we are honored to welcome the special guest whose generosity made this entire event possible. Applause rippled through the room. Amara straightened proudly, certain this moment belonged to someone like her. Please welcome, the host continued, pausing for effect, Mr. Obina Okafor. The doors at the far end of the hall opened slowly. A hush fell over the crowd. Obina stepped forward, not in worn sandals or faded clothes, but in an elegant tailored suit that fit him perfectly. His posture was strong, confident, and commanding. Each step echoed like a drumbeat against the polished floor. The murmurs grew louder. "Who is that? I've heard that name. Isn't he the investor behind half the city's projects?" Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her heart slammed against her chest as if trying to escape. "No, this is impossible," she thought, her mind racing. The man's face was unmistakable. The calm eyes. The quiet strength. The same man she had slapped in the market. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the edge of a table to steady herself. Obinna reached the stage and turned to face the crowd. The lights illuminated his face fully now, leaving no room for doubt. Gasps erupted across the hall. Phones rose instantly, capturing the moment. Amara felt the room spinning. This cannot be real. That poor man is him? Obinna's gaze slowly swept across the audience until it stopped on Amara. The silence became unbearable. Memories flooded her mind. The slap, her cruel words, the laughter of her friends. Her cheeks burned hotter than they ever had before. For the first time in her life, she wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. "I see many familiar faces tonight," Obinna said calmly, his voice steady but powerful. "Some who respect. Others, and some who judge by appearance." The words landed like stones. People shifted uncomfortably. Whispers turned sharp. Heads slowly turned toward Amara. She felt exposed, stripped of her pride in front of everyone she had tried to impress. Her earlier confidence crumbled into fear and shame. Obinna paused, letting the weight of the moment sink deep. "Tonight," he continued, "is not just about wealth or charity. It is about character." The applause that followed was thunderous, but for Amara, the sound was deafening in a different way. In one shocking revelation, the world she believed she ruled had collapsed, and the man she had humiliated now stood far above her, holding nothing but truth and quiet power. The applause slowly faded, leaving behind a heavy silence that pressed against every heart in the hall. Obinna raised one hand gently, signaling for calm. His face carried no anger, no pride, only quiet authority. "Please," he said, his voice low but firm, "this moment is not for praise." The crowd leaned in, drawn by the weight of his words. "It is for reflection." He stepped away from the podium, walking slowly across the stage as though each step carried meaning. "Days ago," he continued, "I walked through our village market dressed as a poor man. I did not go there to beg. I went to learn." His eyes moved briefly toward Amara, who stood frozen, her head bowed, her chest tight with shame. "I did this," she thought painfully. "Everyone knows. I learned that clothes can lie," Obinna said. "Money can deceive. But the heart never hides for long." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some guests nodded, others looked down at their shoes, remembering moments they wished they could erase. "The way you treat someone who has nothing," he added, "reveals everything about who you truly are." Amara's hands trembled. The room felt too bright, too exposed. Slowly she stepped forward, her voice barely steady. "Sir, Obinna," she said, swallowing hard. "I was wrong." Every eye turned toward her. "I allowed pride to blind me. I judged you, and I hurt you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I ask for forgiveness, not because of who you are, but because of who I failed to be." The silence that followed was raw and honest. Obinna looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded gently. "True humility," he said, "is the beginning of wisdom." He turned back to the crowd. "Wealth is not a crown. It is a test, and many fail it without knowing." His voice softened. "But failure is not the end, unless pride refuses to let us change." Amara felt something shift inside her, like a wall breaking. For the first time, she was not afraid of losing status. She was afraid of losing her humanity. The guests erupted into a softer, deeper applause, not of celebration but of understanding. As Obinna concluded, one truth settled into every heart present. Respect costs nothing, kindness reveals everything, and the greatest wealth a person can possess is a humble soul. The gala hall slowly emptied. Its once bright lights dimmed to a soft glow. The echoes of laughter and applause faded into silence, leaving behind only memories and heavy thoughts. Amara stood alone near the large windows, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. For the first time in years she felt small, not because someone had humbled her publicly, but because she finally saw herself clearly. How did I become this person? She wondered, her reflection staring back at her with tired, regretful eyes. She replayed the market scene again and again. The slap, the cruel words, the fear in the young girl's eyes. Each memory burned with painful clarity. I thought power was loud, she whispered to herself. I thought respect was bought. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. A tear slid down her cheek, not out of shame alone, but out of understanding. She knew now that wealth had not corrupted her overnight. It had simply revealed what she had allowed to grow unchecked. Outside, Obinna stood quietly by his car, the night air cool against his face. He did not seek attention or praise. He had said what needed to be said. As he looked up at the stars, his thoughts were calm. If even one heart changes, he reflected, then the lesson was worth the pain. He did not feel victorious, only hopeful. Amara gathered her courage and stepped outside. She did not call his name. She simply watched him from a distance, respect finally replacing pride. I cannot undo the past, she thought, but I can choose who I become next. For the first time, that choice felt heavier and more meaningful than any gold she owned. Obinna opened his car door, then paused, sensing her presence. Without turning fully, he spoke gently. Change does not announce itself, he said. It proves itself with time. Amara nodded, even though he could not see her. Those words settled deep within her heart. As Obinna drove away into the quiet night, Amara remained standing, the cool breeze brushing her face like a promi. The story did not end with punishment or revenge, but with awakening. And so the lesson echoed softly into the darkness. Pride builds walls, humility opens doors, and true wealth begins the moment we learn to see others as equals.